In the small, secluded village of Waverley, nestled deep within the forested hills, an uneasy quiet settled over the cobblestone streets. The villagers knew the stories, the whispered legends of a beast that roamed the woods under the light of the full moon. But legends were easier to dismiss in the daylight, and life carried on with a veneer of normalcy. As the days grew shorter and the nights longer, the sense of dread grew among the villagers. The last full moon had brought with it strange happenings, livestock found mutilated, claw marks on doors, and distant howls that chilled the blood. But it was the disappearance of young Mary Cartwright that truly shook the village to its core. Mary was last seen near the edge of the forest, her bright red cloak a stark contrast against the darkening woods. She had gone to gather herbs for her ailing mother and never returned. Search parties were formed, and the men of the village ventured into the woods, torches in hand, calling her name. They found nothing but eerie silence and the oppressive feeling of being watched. Ethan Hawke, a hunter known for his bravery, took it upon himself to solve the mystery. He was skeptical of the old tales but couldn't ignore the mounting evidence. Armed with his rifle and a silver knife, a relic passed down through his family, he ventured into the heart of the forest on the night of the next full moon. The forest was alive with the sounds of the night, but there was an unnatural stillness that set Ethan on edge. He moved silently, every sense heightened, until he came to a clearing bathed in the ghostly light of the full moon. There, he saw it, a massive, shadowy figure, its eyes glowing with an unholy light. The werewolf. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he raised his rifle, but the beast moved with inhuman speed, knocking the weapon from his hands. He drew the silver knife, slashing wildly, feeling the blade connect with flesh. The werewolf howled in pain, retreating into the shadows, but not before Ethan saw something that made his blood run cold, a scrap of red fabric caught in its fur. The beast was wounded but far from defeated. Ethan knew he had to finish the job, for Mary, and for the safety of the village. He followed the trail of blood deeper into the forest, his resolve hardening with each step. The hunt was on. As dawn approached, Ethan found himself at the entrance of an ancient cave, hidden among the rocks. The air was thick with the smell of blood and decay. He stepped inside, the darkness swallowing him whole. The sound of labored breathing echoed through the cave, and Ethan knew he was close. But what he found inside was beyond anything he could have imagined. The werewolf, weakened and bleeding, lay curled on the cold stone floor, and beside it, a crumpled figure, Mary. Her eyes, once filled with life, were now vacant, staring into the void. She had been transformed, a creature caught between two worlds. Ethan's heart pounded as he realized the terrible truth. The werewolf wasn't just a beast, it was someone from the village, someone cursed to live this nightmare. And Mary was becoming one of them. The beast stirred, its eyes locking onto Ethan's, and in that moment, he saw a flicker of humanity, a plea for mercy. Ethan knew what he had to do, but as he raised the knife for the final blow, doubt gnawed at him. Could he condemn a soul to eternal damnation? Could he save Mary, or was she lost forever? The cave fell silent as Ethan made his choice, the weight of it settling over him like a shroud. The villagers of Waverley would wake to find their nightmare over, or perhaps just beginning. For in the shadows, where the light of the full moon could not reach, the line between man and monster blurred, and the true horror was yet to come. Ethan's hand trembled as he stood over Mary and the werewolf. The silver knife, its blade glinting in the faint light, seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The beast's eyes, though pained and feral, seemed to hold a depth of sorrow and desperation that made Ethan's resolve waver. Before he could act, a low growl rumbled through the cave, and the werewolf's form shifted, its massive body convulsing as if in agony. Mary's limp form stirred slightly, and Ethan saw a dark shape begin to emerge from the shadows of the cave. The werewolf's transformation was not yet complete. Something was fighting to break free from within. A cold, oppressive mist began to seep into the cave, thickening the air and making it hard to breathe. Ethan's senses were overwhelmed by a growing sense of dread, as if the cave itself was alive and conspiring against him. The shadows seemed to writhe, and strange whispers echoed off the walls. adding to the disorienting atmosphere. The werewolf's eyes, now almost human, locked onto Ethan's with a pleading look. The creature's mouth moved, forming words that Ethan couldn't quite understand. The words were a mixture of growls and hisses, but there was an unmistakable sense of urgency. Mary's eyes, too, began to flicker open, her gaze shifting between Ethan and the werewolf. Suddenly, the cave's temperature dropped, and the ground beneath Ethan's feet began to tremble. The mist coalesced into a swirling, dense fog that seemed to pulse with a dark energy. From within the mist emerged a figure cloaked in shadow, its presence exuding an overwhelming sense of malevolence. The figure spoke in a voice that reverberated through the cave. "You cannot save them, Hunter. The curse is ancient and powerful, beyond the reach of mere mortals." Ethan's blood ran cold. The figure was a specter, its form shifting and undulating as if it were part of the very mist itself. The specter's gaze fixed on Ethan, and he felt an icy chill seep into his bones. "The beast you see is but a pawn in a larger game," the specter continued. "The curse was placed here long ago, binding the souls of those who transgressed against the forest's ancient spirits. The true source of the curse is hidden, and as long as it remains, the cycle will never end." Ethan's heart raced as he glanced between Mary, who was slowly regaining consciousness, and the werewolf, which was now attempting to rise but was clearly weakened. The specter's words weighed heavily on him. If the curse was beyond his power to break, what was the point of any further action? The specter drifted closer, its voice lowering to a sinister whisper. "To break the curse, one must uncover the truth hidden in the deepest part of the forest. There lies the heart of the darkness that binds them. Fail to find it, and the curse will consume everything." Ethan's thoughts raced. The cave's oppressive atmosphere and the specter's chilling words left him with a profound sense of urgency. He knew that the true battle was only beginning, and the fate of Mary, the werewolf, and perhaps even the village of Waverly rested on his ability to uncover and confront the source of the curse. With renewed determination, Ethan nodded to the specter, silently accepting the challenge. The specter's form began to fade, its parting words echoing in the cave. "Find the heart of the darkness, or be consumed by it." As the mist began to recede and the cave's temperature stabilized, Ethan looked at Mary and the werewolf. The creature's eyes were full of a strange mix of fear and hope, while Mary's gaze was distant, as if she were trapped between worlds. Ethan knew he had to leave the cave and venture deeper into the forest, guided only by fragments of clues and the whispers of ancient secrets. The journey would be perilous, filled with unknown dangers and dark truths, but the fate of the cursed souls and the village depended on his success. With one last look at the two suffering beings, Ethan steeled himself for the journey ahead. The heart of the darkness awaited, and he would have to confront whatever lay hidden in the depths of the forest to unravel the mystery and break the curse. The night was still young, and the full moon's light would guide him or betray him as he ventured into the unknown. Ethan emerged from the cave, the cool night air hitting his face like a splash of icy water. The mist had cleared, but an unsettling stillness hung over the forest, as if it were holding its breath. He glanced back at the cave entrance, knowing that whatever happened inside was only the beginning of a much larger, darker journey. With only the moonlight to guide him, Ethan plunged deeper into the forest. The trees seemed to close in around him, their gnarled branches whispering secrets he couldn't quite decipher. The ancient forest was both beautiful and menacing, its dark beauty concealing the malevolence that lurked within. He followed a trail of broken branches and disturbed leaves, remnants of the werewolf's flight. The deeper he ventured, the more oppressive the air became, thick with a sense of something ancient and wrong. The path twisted and turned, leading him to a small clearing surrounded by towering trees. In the center of the clearing stood an old, weather-beaten altar, its surface covered in strange symbols and runes. The stones were etched with what looked like warnings and ancient rites. Ethan approached cautiously, the silver knife gripped tightly in his hand. As he examined the altar, a cold wind blew through the clearing, carrying with it a haunting melody. The sound was both beautiful and chilling, as if it were a lament from another time. The wine seemed to guide him, pulling him towards a dark, narrow crevice in the side of a hill. Ethan squeezed through the crevice and found himself in a small, dimly lit chamber. The air inside was heavy with the scent of decay and something else, something both sweet and metallic. At the center of the chamber was a large, ornate chest, covered in intricate carvings that matched the symbols on the altar. With a deep breath, Ethan opened the chest. Inside, he found an old, leather-bound book and a collection of strange artifacts, jars filled with unidentifiable substances, twisted pieces of metal, and worn, tattered clothes. The book was the most intriguing item. Its cover was embossed with an intricate pattern that pulsed faintly with an otherworldly light. He carefully opened the book, revealing pages filled with ancient script and disturbing illustrations. The text described a powerful curse placed upon the forest long ago, a punishment for a great betrayal. The illustrations depicted transformations, rituals, and the monstrous entities bound by the curse. One illustration in particular caught his eye, a drawing of a creature similar to the werewolf, bound in chains, with an inscription that read, "The heart of darkness feeds on betrayal." The realization hit Ethan with a jolt. The curse was not just a punishment but a living entity, feeding off the darkness in human hearts. To break it, he would need to confront the source of this darkness, a betrayal so deep that it had shaped the very nature of the curse. As he studied the book, the chamber's temperature dropped again, and the eerie melody returned, louder and more insistent. Shadows danced around the walls, forming unsettling shapes that seemed to reach out to him. Ethan could feel an oppressive presence, as if he were not alone in the chamber. The ground beneath him began to tremble, and the chest's lid slammed shut on its own. The book fell open to a new page, revealing a map of the forest with a red X marking a spot deep within its heart. The page was adorned with the same sinister symbols and runes, along with a final, chilling note: "The heart of darkness lies where the veil between worlds is thinnest." Ethan knew that the map was directing him to the very core of the forest, where the curse had originated. With grim determination, he tucked the book into his bag and prepared to follow the map's guidance. The forest was no longer just a place of shadows, it was a labyrinth of dark secrets waiting to be uncovered. As he ventured further into the forest, the sense of being watched grew stronger. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a twig seemed to be a whisper from the darkness, warning him to turn back. But Ethan pressed on, driven by the need to end the curse and free Mary and the werewolf from their torment. The full moon cast long, eerie shadows as he approached the marked location. The forest grew denser, and the air grew colder, until he reached a clearing dominated by an ancient, twisted tree. Its gnarled roots seemed to writhe and pulse, as if alive. At the base of the tree was an old stone slab, covered in more of the same runes. Ethan set up his makeshift camp, the artifacts and books spread out before him. He knew he had to perform a ritual to break the curse, but the details were vague and the runes unfamiliar. As he prepared to begin, the shadows around the clearing began to shift and coalesce, forming shapes that were both familiar and terrifying. The whispers grew louder, and Ethan could feel a presence growing stronger, as if the forest itself were coming alive to confront him. With a deep breath, Ethan started the ritual, chanting the ancient words from the book. The tree's roots began to tremble, and the ground around him cracked. The forest held its breath as Ethan faced the heart of the darkness, knowing that the outcome of his efforts would determine not only his fate but the fate of all those bound by the curse. The night was far from over, and the true battle had just begun. As Ethan chanted the ancient words from the book, the ground beneath him cracked and trembled. The twisted roots of the ancient tree began to writhe, their movements almost sentient, as if the tree itself was awakening. The eerie melody from earlier grew louder, a haunting, almost mocking tune that echoed through the clearing. The forest seemed to close in around him, the shadows deepening and the air growing colder. The runes on the stone slab glowed with a faint, ominous light, pulsating in rhythm with Ethan's chanting. The oppressive presence he had felt earlier became almost tangible, pressing in on him from all sides. Suddenly, the chanting was interrupted by a sharp, bone-chilling howl. Ethan's heart raced as he glanced around, but there was no sign of the werewolf. Instead, the shadows began to take form, coalescing into grotesque, nightmarish shapes that danced around the clearing. The forest seemed to breathe with a life of its own, the trees whispering in a language he couldn't understand. The ancient tree's roots moved more violently now, as if trying to free itself from the spellbinding chains Ethan had placed upon it. The runes on the stone slab began to flicker and distort, the light growing erratic and unsettling. The melody grew more frantic, its notes dissonant and discordant. With a final, desperate cry, Ethan completed the chant. The ground shuddered violently, and a blinding flash of light erupted from the stone slab. Ethan was thrown backward, the air around him crackling with raw energy. When the light faded, the clearing was eerily quiet. The ancient tree stood still, its roots now motionless, but the stone slab had vanished. The shadows that had once danced around the clearing were now gone, leaving only a haunting emptiness. Ethan, disoriented and exhausted, slowly got to his feet, his breath coming in ragged gasps. As he turned to leave, he noticed something chilling. The shadows on the ground, long and twisted, seemed to have formed a new shape, an unmistakable silhouette of a woman with a haunting, vacant gaze. The shadows slowly shifted and moved, following Ethan as he walked. No matter how fast he moved or which direction he turned, the shadowy figure remained in his periphery. The full moon, now high in the sky, cast a ghostly light over the clearing, illuminating the chilling sight. Ethan realized with growing horror that the clearing's silence was not a sign of peace but of something far more sinister. The curse had not been broken, it had merely changed form. The clearing seemed to warp and twist, and Ethan felt an icy chill creeping up his spine. The haunting melody from before returned, now accompanied by a sinister laughter that seemed to echo from every direction. The shadows on the ground began to merge, forming grotesque shapes that moved with an unnatural intelligence. Ethan stumbled through the forest, his sense of direction completely disoriented. The trees seemed to close in on him, their branches clawing at him, as if trying to pull him back into the darkness. The shadows danced around him, their mocking laughter growing louder with each step. Just when Ethan thought he might escape, he saw a figure standing in his path. It was Mary, or at least it looked like her. Her eyes were hollow, her expression blank. She reached out to him with a hand that was skeletal and translucent. Ethan's heart pounded as he realized the truth. Mary was no longer truly alive. She was a specter, a lost soul trapped by the curse. Before he could react, the shadows surged forward, enveloping him in their cold embrace. Ethan's screams echoed through the forest, swallowed by the night. The last thing he saw before everything went dark was the twisted grin of the ancient tree, its roots now intertwined with the very essence of the curse. In the village of Waverly, the next morning brought no relief. The search parties found no trace of Ethan, only an empty clearing where the shadows lingered and the forest seemed to whisper of the horrors within. The curse remained, its heart still beating with malevolent life, and the villagers would soon discover that the darkness had only grown stronger. The legends of Waverly grew darker, the tale of Ethan and the cursed forest becoming a chilling reminder of the ancient evil that could never truly be vanquished. The heart of the darkness had claimed another victim, and the curse continued, feeding on the fears and the souls it ensnared.